Everything changed overnight. Someone is fiercely defending you now. There comes a moment in every chosen one's life when heaven responds in silence, and yet the response shifts everything. You didn't see a vision, you didn't hear a voice, but something within you became still, and from that stillness the universe moved. What you couldn't fight, God began to conquer. What you couldn't say, someone else began to declare. What you couldn't stop, a force beyond you rose up to intercept. Everything changed overnight, not because you begged harder, but because your inner man believed more deeply. You didn't even know it, but while you were sleeping, angels were repositioning people, altering conversations, rerouting attacks, and assigning someone to defend you with fire in their bones. That defender may not even know your whole story, but something in them was ignited by the divine to stand in your defense with a love that doesn't ask questions and a strength that won't retreat. This isn't random. This isn't luck. This is the power of spiritual law in motion. When you accepted that you were worth defending, the world mirrored your belief, and now someone has risen with divine fury, not just to protect your name, but to shield. There is a sacred mystery that governs every movement in your life, and it begins not outside, but within. The world you experience is not a series of random coincidences or divine favoritism doled out to the few. No, it is the precise reflection of your sustained inner assumptions. You are not waiting for life to bless you. Life is waiting for you to believe you already are. Everything you see is answering to something you once accepted as true. The outer life is an echo, the inner world is the voice. And so, when you begin to assume protection, defense, and vindication, though no one stands by you yet, the unseen begins to rally around your unseen belief. What you claim in the silence is claimed by others in the noise. You declare in your imagination that you are defended, and suddenly someone, somewhere, begins to feel a divine pull to protect your name, your future, your destiny. You don't have to know who they are. You don't need to orchestrate the connection. The world will fulfill your belief. The law is that certain. The system is that exact. This is why everything changed overnight. It did not change because your circumstances shifted. It did not change because the world became kinder. It changed because something in you shifted first, maybe subtly, maybe quietly, but powerfully. You assumed that what was against you could no longer prevail. You assumed that your identity was worth defending, that your soul was valuable, that your journey was holy. You stopped doubting that you belonged here. You stopped asking for proof and started resting in the assurance of divine truth. And that moment, that silent, inward pivot, caused the world to take notice. It caused heaven to commission someone to act on your behalf. They may not have known you. They may still not fully understand why they are drawn to you. But spiritual law does not work by logic. It works by alignment. The one who is now fiercely defending you was pulled into orbit by the gravity of your belief. Every act of defense begins with an invisible invitation. You extended that invitation not with your words, but with your assumption. You imagined being safe. You felt the reality of being guarded, of being fought for, of being protected by someone strong and divinely chosen. You may not have even realized you were doing it, but you allowed that image to enter your heart. And once an image is accepted, the world will bend itself to reflect it. You don't chase the outcome. You embody the state, and from that embodiment, the outcome comes to you. This is why begging doesn't work. This is why desperation exhausts, because those who beg still believe they are without. But those who assume are already carrying the seed, and the seed always produces after its kind. When you begin to understand this, everything in your life begins to shift. You no longer chase after people to help you. You no longer plead for someone to stand by you. You no longer cry for someone to see your worth. You turn inward, you plant the truth in silence. I am protected, I am defended, I am not alone, and from that internal planting, the external fruit begins to grow. Someone begins to rise in your defense. Someone begins to see you with divine eyes. Someone begins to speak your name in rooms you've never entered, to challenge voices that have spoken against you, to protect a destiny they barely understand but deeply feel. They are not your creation, they are your reflection. They are not random, they are the manifestation of the assumption you finally dared to hold as true. The world will reflect whatever you most consistently accept as fact. If you accept that no one will fight for you, life will give you more silence. If you accept that you're always alone, the world will give you more absence. But the moment you assume with reverence, not arrogance, that you are deeply worthy of divine protection, the world must comply. It has no choice. The outer world has no creative power of its own. It is compelled by the inner world, by your world. And when your inner world declares that you are surrounded by invisible forces and chosen defenders, the outer world rises to obey. This is not imagination in the childish sense. This is the divine act of creation. You are not pretending when you assume. You are planting. You are setting a law in motion, and like any law, it does not return void. You must understand this clearly. There is nothing passive about assumption. It is not wishful thinking. It is not denial. It is the conscious acceptance of an unseen reality. You walk as though it is already so. You feel the relief of knowing you are safe before anything outside you changes. You go to sleep as though the battle has already been won, because spiritually it has. The moment you accept the truth, everything else must align. And sometimes that alignment comes overnight. While you rest, the universe reorders. While you sleep, someone awakens. While you surrender, another is stirred to take up the sword on your behalf. This is not strange. This is spiritual law, and so now, in the visible world, things are shifting rapidly. Someone is not just on your side, they are fiercely on your side. They are moved not by logic, but by divine impulse. They are activated by the call of heaven, stirred by a voice that does not speak in words, and driven by a love that does not require explanation. But you are the reason they came. Your assumption opened the door. Your inner agreement created the space. Your faith summoned the support. Never again think that your imagination is powerless. Never again believe that nothing is happening. Everything is happening the moment you believe it is. This is why some breakthroughs seem to arrive suddenly. They were never sudden. They were always being formed in the unseen. But your assumption reached critical mass, and now the fruit is visible. The defender has appeared. The advocate has spoken. The one who was assigned to you has accepted their mission, and your only task now is to continue in faith. Don't watch the outer world for proof. Continue assuming. Continue believing. Continue holding the image of protection, of safety, of righteous defense. The more you do, the stronger their presence becomes, because the world will never rise above the image you hold within. But once your image is complete, the world will not fall below it either. Your purpose. You are not alone anymore. A mighty advocate walks before you. Now, there is a sacred mystery that governs every movement in your life, and it begins not outside, but within. The world you experience is not a series of random coincidences or divine favoritism doled out to the few. No, it is the precise reflection of your sustained inner assumptions. You are not waiting for life to bless you. Life is waiting for you to believe you already are. Everything you see is answering to something you once accepted as true. The outer life is an echo, the inner world is the voice, and so when you begin to assume protection, defense, and vindication, though no one stands by you yet, the unseen begins to rally around your unseen belief. What you claim in the silence is claimed by others in the noise. You declare in your imagination that you are defended, and suddenly someone somewhere begins to feel a divine pull to protect your name, your future. Your destiny. You don't have to know who they are. You don't need to orchestrate the connection. The world will fulfill your belief. The law is that certain. The system is that exact. This is why everything changed overnight. It did not change because your circumstances shifted. It did not change because the world became kinder. It changed because something in you shifted first, maybe subtly, maybe quietly, but powerfully. You assumed that what was against you could no longer prevail. You assumed that your identity was worth defending, that your soul was valuable, that your journey was holy. You stopped doubting that you belonged here. You stopped asking for proof and started resting in the assurance of divine truth. And that moment, that silent, inward pivot caused the world to take notice. It caused heaven to commission someone to act on your behalf. They may not have known you, they may still not fully understand why they are drawn to you, but spiritual law does not work by logic, it works by alignment. The one who is now fiercely defending you was pulled into orbit by the gravity of your belief. Every act of defense begins with an invisible invitation. You extend that invitation not with your words, but with your assumption. You imagine being safe. You felt the reality of being guarded, of being fought for, of being protected by someone strong and divinely chosen. You may not have even realized you were doing it, but you allowed that image to enter your heart, and once an image is accepted, the world will bend itself to reflect it. You don't chase the outcome, you embody the state, and from that embodiment the outcome comes to you. This is why begging doesn't work. This is why desperation exhausts. Because those who beg still believe they are without, but those who assume are already carrying the seed, and the seed always produces after its kind. When you begin to understand this, everything in your life begins to shift. You no longer chase after people to help you. You no longer plead for someone to stand by you. You no longer cry for someone to see your worth. You turn inward. You plant the truth in silence. I am protected. I am defended. I am not alone. And from that internal planting, the external fruit begins to grow. Someone begins to rise in your defense. Someone begins to see you with divine eyes. Someone begins to speak your name in rooms you've never entered, to challenge voices that have spoken against you, to protect a destiny they barely understand but deeply feel. They are not your creation, they are your reflection. They are not random, they are the manifestation of the assumption you finally dared to hold as true. The world will reflect whatever you most consistently accept as fact. If you accept that no one will fight for you, life will give you more silence. If you accept that you're always alone, the world will give you more absence. But the moment you assume with reverence, not arrogance, that you are deeply worthy of divine protection, the world must comply. It has no choice. The outer world has no creative power of its own. It is compelled by the inner world, by your world, and when your inner world declares that you are surrounded by invisible forces and chosen defenders, the outer world rises to obey. This is not imagination in the childish sense. This is the divine act of creation. You are not pretending when you assume. You are planting. You are setting a law in motion. And like any law, it does not return void. You must understand this clearly. There is nothing passive about assumption. It is not wishful thinking. It is not denial. It is the conscious acceptance of an unseen reality. You walk as though it is already so. You feel the relief of knowing you are safe before anything outside you changes. You go to sleep as though the battle has already been won, because spiritually it has. The moment you accept the truth, everything else must align, and sometimes that alignment comes overnight. While you rest, the universe reorders. While you sleep, someone awakens. While you surrender, another is stirred to take up the sword on your behalf. This is not strange. This is spiritual law. And so now, in the visible world, things are shifting rapidly. Someone is not just on your side, they are fiercely on your side. They are moved not by logic, but by divine impulse. They are activated by the call of heaven, stirred by a voice that does not speak in words, and driven by a love that does not require explanation. But you are the reason they came. Your assumption opened the door. Your inner agreement created the space. Your faith summoned the support. Never again think that your imagination is powerless. Never again believe that nothing is happening. Everything is happening the moment you believe it is. This is why some breakthroughs seem to arrive suddenly. They were never sudden. They were always being formed in the unseen. But your assumption reached critical mass, and now the fruit is visible. The defender has appeared. Advocate has spoken. The one who was assigned to you has accepted their mission, and your only task now is to continue in faith. Don't watch the outer world for proof. Continue assuming. Continue believing. Continue holding the image of protection, of safety, of righteous defense. The more you do, the stronger their presence becomes, because the world will never rise above the image you hold within. But once your image is complete, the world will not fall below it either. There is no such thing as coincidence in the life of one who walks in spiritual understanding. Every movement in your world is the direct expression of your inner state, and nothing enters your life unless it was first permitted by your consciousness. You may think that the arrival of this fierce defender was random, unexpected, or even miraculous, but it was not. It was the natural outpouring of the decision you made deep within your spirit when you chose to stop being your own enemy and began to truly accept that you are worth defending. Your inner world, which governs every outer experience, silently made a selection, not out of desperation, not from fear, but from spiritual conviction. You believe. even without knowing how, that someone would stand in the gap for you, someone would carry the sword you were too tired to lift, someone would protect the treasure that you are, even when you felt unseen or misunderstood. And because you believed it, even if only for a fleeting moment, heaven began to orchestrate the answer. You see, the outer world is simply the theater in which your inner beliefs are acted out. It is the canvas upon which your thoughts and assumptions are painted with vivid detail. When you dwell long enough in the feeling of safety, when you dare to trust that you are worthy of spiritual loyalty and divine protection, the universe must conform. And because your consciousness held the image of defense, because you walked in the inner feeling of being protected without having physical proof, someone was magnetized to your cause. That person didn't appear out of nowhere. They were always in proximity to your timeline, but they could only step into their role when your inner world allowed them access. People are moved like pieces on a divine chessboard, but it is not fate that commands them. It is the authority of your assumption. And when your inner self cried out with assurance rather than despair, when you walked in the knowing that your defense was coming, the one appointed for this role received the spiritual signal. They felt something, a pull, a divine unrest, a surge of urgency to stand for something that didn't fully make sense to their conscious mind, but their soul knew, and so they rose. And you must understand, this person is not here to fulfill your ego, or to carry your pain for you, or to save you from your own life. They are here because your inner self reached a place of such harmony with divine protection that it called forth an outer expression of that truth, and that expression took the form of a person, a champion, a spiritual warrior with eyes for your value and fire for your vindication. They didn't ask for this assignment in the earthly sense, but they answered the call in the spiritual sense, and they are not going anywhere because the bond created by spiritual alignment is not easily broken by temporal interference. This is why you must honor what your inner world has created. Do not second guess the blessing you've summoned. Do not sabotage the one who has been sent to defend your calling by doubting whether you deserve it. You do, not because of anything you've done, but because of who you are, because of the divine seed you carry, the purpose you were born to fulfill, and the legacy you were called to build. The one now standing beside you is not here to rescue you from your destiny. They are here to help protect it, and they were chosen not by accident, but by spiritual resonance. When your inner atmosphere became a match for protection, that person's spirit was stirred to respond. They may have been walking beside you all along, or they may have entered suddenly like lightning across the sky, but make no mistake, they were chosen by your inner world. And your role now is to continue choosing them by continuing to assume the truth. Do not revert to the mindset of abandonment. Do not shrink into the old lie that no one ever stays or that everyone always leaves. That was the vibration of a former self, a version of you that didn't yet know the power of assumption, but now you know, and now you've seen. The world responds to the one who walks in truth. When you believe you are protected, protection arrives. When you believe you are worth fighting for, someone shows up to fight. And when you believe that your purpose is so sacred that heaven will not allow it to be sabotaged, heaven sends a guardian to enforce that belief in real time. You must also understand this truth. Your champion is not perfect. They may not say all the right things, may be flawed in the eyes of the world, but the spirit within them is attuned to yours, and their fire for your protection is not natural. It is spiritual. It was lit in the unseen realm. It was forged in prayer, in silence, in invisible realms of alignment. You may never know what had to shift for them to arrive. You may never understand what God stirred in them to bring them to this place, but your role is not to understand. It is to accept. It is to stand tall in the knowledge that your inner world did not lie. It chose wisely, it chose powerfully, and it chose on your behalf when you were too weary to speak. This moment in your life is not about proving yourself anymore. It is about resting in the protection that you've already created. You don't have to justify your need for defense. You don't have to explain why someone is fighting for you now. You don't have to overthink it. Just allow it. Allow the love. Allow the support. Allow the fierce loyalty to surround you like armor, because your soul built it. Your inner world designed it. Your spiritual alignment summoned it. This is not an interruption to your journey. It is a divine part of it. The journey of the chosen is never walked alone, even if it appears so for a season. Eventually, every chosen one reaches the moment where their inner convictions become visible companions. You have reached that moment, and now someone is standing with you, not because you demanded it, not because you earned it by effort, but because you aligned with it in spirit. They are not your savior. They are the confirmation. They are the proof that your inner work was never in vain. So lift your head, walk forward with strength. You are not unprotected anymore. You are not overlooked anymore. Your inner world has chosen, and the world has obeyed. Your champion has arrived, and they will not leave you, because your spirit has made room for their loyalty. Everything changed when you changed within. This is the law, this is the truth, and now you are living it. There is a quiet hour when nothing seems to be happening, when your body rests and your mind drifts, but it is in that unseen hour that your life begins to rearrange. What looks like inactivity on the surface is actually divine construction behind the veil. The world is moved not by noise, not by effort, not even by visible work, but by the still, bold declarations of your inner world. You see, life is not shaped by hustle. It is shaped by spiritual authority, and the most powerful authority you have is the one you often forget: your ability to believe in silence. While you sleep, your assumptions speak. While your eyes are closed to the world, your inner world is wide awake, and it is in that realm that the great shift begins. The circumstances that once stood immovable begin to bend. The people who once overlooked you begin to feel an unexplained pull toward your cause. Conversations you are not present for begin to echo with your name. Your defense, your elevation, you didn't make it happen through manipulation. You didn't chase it with desperation. You believed, and then you rested, and while you rested, the divine rearranged the scene. The life you live today is not the result of what you did this morning. It is the fruit of what you allowed yourself to believe in previous days, especially in those hidden moments where no one was watching and no one was clapping. Those nights when you surrendered your worry, when you fell asleep in peace despite the chaos, when you whispered to yourself, "I am safe, I am protected, I am covered." That was the hour of transformation. The world began to move, the play began to shift, the characters that were once silent were stirred to speak, the stage lights changed, and a new act began. You weren't awake to witness it, but it doesn't mean it didn't happen, and now, because of that sacred surrender, you've awakened into a new scene, a new alignment, a new defender, a new dynamic. Someone has been positioned to stand where you could not, and they were placed there while you did the hardest work of all, trusting the unseen. Understand this: you don't need to be awake for God to work. You don't need to control every detail to see divine order unfold. The law does not require your constant management, it requires your faithful agreement. And the moment you agree with the vision you've received, the moment you accept that your life is protected, guided, and destined, the rearrangement begins. Not one moment of your trust is wasted. Not one second of your spiritual confidence is ignored. When you close your eyes in belief, you awaken in victory. The work is done in realms beyond your reach. The play is adjusted not by your hands, but by your heart. And someone, somewhere, felt the shift. They couldn't explain why they were moved to speak up for you, to defend you, to align with you, but the pull was too strong to resist. The pull came from your assumption. You imagined the life where you were no longer alone, and the world obeyed. You must realize that spiritual law is not slow, it is immediate, but the manifestation appears to take time because the scene must be reordered, the actors must be moved, the script must be rewritten, the old must be cleared out to make room for the new. But the order is instant the moment your assumption is complete. That moment when you finally believed, not just with your words, but with your whole being, caused everything to shift. It's not about begging God to intervene. It's about stepping into the knowing that He already has. You don't wrestle your way into divine alignment. You yield to it. And when you yield, you enter a sleep deeper than physical rest. You enter the rest of spiritual assurance. And that kind of rest moves mountains. You are not where you are by chance. You are in the middle of a divine reordering. And if things seem unfamiliar, if the old systems are falling apart, if the people you once depended on have fallen silent, it is only because the scene is still shifting. The curtain hasn't risen yet, but behind the curtain the stage is being transformed, and you are about to be ushered into a moment that was designed not by your striving, but by your surrender. Someone has been called into your scene. They have stepped into their role with fire and clarity. They will defend you with a conviction they themselves do not fully understand, because their role was written by a greater hand, and that script was activated by your faith. You don't need to go back and rehearse the pain. You don't need to relive the betrayal. You don't need to keep proving that you were worth protecting. The script has already changed. The former cast has already exited, and the one assigned to this next chapter has already stepped forward. Their arrival is not random. It is the result of divine rearrangement. While you slept physically or spiritually, the world around you began to mirror the truth you dared to believe. You thought you were just getting through the night, but heaven was writing a new day, and that new day includes someone who will stand in front of you with unshakable loyalty, someone who has been stirred in the deepest part of their spirit to guard what you carry. You didn't choose them with your mind. Your inner world chose them with your conviction. You didn't reach out and find them. You reached inward, and they were drawn to the frequency of your faith. That is how spiritual alignment works. The heart chooses before the eyes see. The soul connects before the body arrives. You think this is new, but it was already settled, and now the evidence is appearing. Let it. Do not question it. Do not resist it. Do not shrink in guilt, thinking you do not deserve it. You do, because you trusted when it made no sense. You believed when no one stood beside you. You walked forward when all you had was the invisible, and now the invisible is becoming visible. You must remember this the next time you feel forgotten. You must hold this truth when the silence returns. What looks still is never truly still. What looks delayed is never truly denied. The scenes are always shifting for the one who lives from within. You don't have to see it to know it. You don't have to hear it to trust it. You just have to believe deeply, completely, and without condition. Let the world rearrange itself around your faith. Let the cast of your life change as needed. Let the defender come without needing to explain why. It is already written, and the script is already in motion. So rest, chosen one. Sleep in peace. The one who now defends you was positioned while you surrendered. The doors that are opening were unlocked while you released control. The favor that is finding you now was signed off by heaven when you laid down your burdens and trusted the vision. You did not need to fight for it. You only needed to believe it, and you did, and that belief changed everything, not in the morning, not eventually, but in the moment you dared to rest in truth. The scene of your life has been rearranged, and someone has stepped into their divine role to defend what you carry. Let the curtain rise. The shift has already begun. The universe does not act randomly, nor does it bless arbitrarily. It responds directly to the images you carry within. Every person who enters your life, every conversation you overhear, every door that opens or shuts, is a reflection of your most consistent assumptions. The truth is simple, yet often missed. What you imagine with feeling and sustain with faith must be made visible, and the universe uses people, events, timing, and even opposition as instruments to deliver what your inner world has already claimed. This is why, when you finally accepted that you are no longer unguarded, no longer exposed, no longer meant to fight alone, the universe responded by moving someone into position, someone chosen by spiritual resonance, someone who now fiercely defends you not because of obligation, but because their soul is echoing your inner image. That image, one you formed when you decided you were worthy of protection, when you imagined being surrounded, covered, and defended, has now found form in a person. They may look like just a friend, a colleague, a stranger with a timely word, but they are much more than that. They are the carrier of a divine instruction, the manifestation of your belief, the living proof that the world is always bowing to your inner conviction. And yet many dismiss this power, not realizing that the outer world is not initiating events, it is merely responding. You do not see change because you take action. You see change because your assumption becomes embodied. Your belief has a shape, a tone, a weight, and people around you feel it even if they cannot explain it. The universe, which is really the mirror of your consciousness, begins to whisper into the hearts of others. It taps on their shoulder, stirs their intuition, urges them to speak, to act, to intervene, and when they respond, they think it's coincidence, but you know better. You know that your image went before you. You know that your inner declaration became a spiritual call that only certain souls could hear. You didn't force this help to come. You didn't manipulate it. You didn't strategize it. You allowed it. You believed first. You assumed it was already yours, and the universe, obedient to the law of consciousness, began to move people like chess pieces into perfect alignment with your vision. This is why, though everything may seem outwardly the same, you now feel different. You feel defended, you feel covered, you feel seen, not because someone simply decided to care, but because your inner world became a broadcast, a frequency that drew in those who were equipped and willing to match it. The defender in your life is not guessing. They have been assigned. They may not even understand the depth of their connection to you, but they are here because they were spiritually sent. Sent not from some distant throne, but from your own assumption. When you stopped agreeing with powerlessness, when you stopped rehearsing stories of abandonment and started walking in the vibration of divine favor, the world responded in kind. That response now has a face, a voice, a loyalty that is undeniable, and you must embrace this, not with arrogance, but with reverence. This is not about needing to be rescued. This is about alignment. This is about spiritual law made flesh. You must also be wise enough to recognize that this movement is not always loud. Sometimes the defender enters quietly. Sometimes their defense is not spoken, but felt, a shield in the spirit, a silent advocate in rooms you have never entered, a presence that blocks what you'll never even know was trying to reach you. They may not make a grand announcement, but they are faithful to their call. They are driven not by duty, but by divine impulse. Something in them burns when your name is attacked. Something in them rises when your purpose is questioned. They are not just present, they are engaged, and they didn't choose that role with their mind. They were chosen by your energy, your vision, your agreement with the truth that you are not meant to walk alone. Think of it like this: your inner image is a command, not to demand, not a plea, but a law-governed command that the outer world must fulfill. And because the universe works through vessels, people become the delivery system. If your image is one of fear, betrayal, and abandonment, you will meet those images in flesh. But when your image shifts, when you begin to see yourself surrounded by loyalty, by strength, by advocacy, then the people who match that new image begin to appear. The soul always knows, and the defender, the advocate, the protector that has shown up now is the out, picturing of what you once imagined in private. You don't owe them anything except your continued alignment. Do not shrink back into doubt. Do not sabotage this miracle with unworthiness. You are not being favored as a mistake. You are being honored because you believed. You allowed yourself to see what others could not see yet, and now they see it too. This is why spiritual transformation must begin in the inner chambers. You must become the person who is worth defending in your own mind before anyone in the outer world will reflect that back. Not because you are not already valuable, but because your own agreement with that truth determines who enters your life. Everything begins with the self. You were never unprotected. You just didn't yet believe you were protected. You were never truly alone. You just hadn't yet accepted that someone would fight for you without asking questions. But now, because you held that image long enough, the response has come, and it came in the form of someone whose heart is tuned to yours, not by effort, but by energy, not by pursuit, but by presence. You must allow yourself to lean into this. Do not look around, waiting for the shoe to drop. Do not question whether this is too good to be true. There is no such thing as too good. In the realm of divine law, there is only alignment or misalignment. And when you are aligned, everything that arrives is a match. So if it feels like a miracle, give thanks, but don't dismiss it. Don't resist it. Recognize it as the very thing your soul created. Through its unwavering belief, the person who now defends you does not have to be perfect. They are not your idol. They are your reflection. They are the embodiment of the energy you now walk in. Honor them by staying in that energy, by refusing to return to the mindset that you are alone, by choosing again and again to see yourself surrounded by exactly what you once prayed for. And let this be a new standard for how you walk through life, no longer looking outward for answers, but turning inward and building the image you want to see, no longer doubting your ability to be seen, supported and shielded, but knowing that when you see it first with clarity, with feeling, with expectation, the universe must move to fulfill it. It will speak through people. It will move through relationships. It will open unlikely doors. It will place someone in your path who will stand not just beside you, but before you, shielding you from darts you'll never even see. This is not fantasy. This is spiritual order. This is the law, and the law does not lie. So now, when someone asks you how this happened, how this fierce defender appeared, how things began to shift in your favor, how protection came when you didn't even ask for it, you won't say it was luck. You'll say, "It was already mine within. I believed it before it came. I saw it before they arrived. I held the image before it found form, and because I did, the universe moved through people, through timing, through places I never planned to go, and it will keep moving so long as I remain faithful to the image within." There comes a sacred turning point in every chosen one's journey when the atmosphere shifts and something eternal whispers, "You are not alone anymore." It's not a loud moment. It doesn't always arrive with thunder or lightning or a visible crowd of supporters, but inwardly you know it has happened. The burden is no longer fully on your shoulders. The ache of standing alone in spiritual battles begins to ease. The war you've been fighting quietly, faithfully, courageously, the one that drained your nights and bruised your soul, is now under divine defense. A shield has been raised in realms you cannot see. A warrior has risen in your name. Someone is now standing between you and the arrows that used to pierce straight through. But this isn't merely a person with good intentions. This is a soul moved by divine authority, stirred by a heavenly assignment, activated by the vibration of your transformation. And this shift didn't come because you begged. It came because you believed. Your loneliness was not evidence that God had forgotten you. It was the womb where your spiritual conviction matured. And now that conviction has drawn its match in the outer world. Not a crowd, but a defender. Not a savior, but a shield. You must understand the nature of divine defense. It doesn't always look like what the world expects. It may not come with praise or applause. One who defends you might not make grand declarations or publicly exalt your name. In fact, sometimes the fiercest defenders are silent. They are moved in their spirit, not their ego. They may speak when needed, but more often they cover you in prayer, in alignment, in energy. They guard your name in rooms where your feet haven't walked yet. They push back darkness without needing credit. They intercede without you asking. They are present not because you demanded loyalty, but because your energy no longer permits abandonment. You shifted. You no longer expect to be left behind. You no longer assume betrayal. You no longer carry the image of being unprotected. And because of that, the universe had no choice but to respond. This defender was assigned because you finally became a match for divine partnership. What you believe about yourself governs who is permitted into your space. If you carry the belief that you must always fight alone, then life will mirror that belief and people will withdraw just as you unconsciously expect them to. But the moment you shift, when you begin to carry yourself as someone worthy of covering, someone who walks under a sacred mantle, someone who does not apologize for divine favor, everything begins to reorganize, and someone who matches that inner posture steps forward. Their presence is not an accident, it is an answer to all the nights you walked through fire believing the flame wouldn't consume you, an answer to all the moments you kept showing up when quitting would have been easier. An answer to the quiet inner affirmation you kept repeating, "I am not alone. I am not forsaken. God fights for me." That inner refrain became law, and that law required a living manifestation. This person may be new to your life or someone whose presence has taken on a new role, but their love is not surface level, their defense is not conditional. They are not here to fill a role of emotional validation. They are here because your purpose is too great to be left unguarded. They see you through spiritual eyes. They feel the weight of your calling, even if they don't know every detail. Their connection to you is not driven by logic, it is pulled by divine intuition. Something in them rose when the world came against you. Something in them was activated when the lies, attacks, and betrayals grew louder. Because while the enemy thought you were isolated, the Spirit had already summoned reinforcement. The defense didn't come from the outside, it came through a door your inner world opened, and this is the power of divine defense. It does not ask permission from the enemy, it does not request access. It enters like fire, like wind, like an unseen force that the world cannot understand, and when it lands in the form of a person, that person becomes an extension of the divine, not to dominate, but to protect, not to control, but to cover, not to replace your strength, but to remind you that strength is never solitary. God will not allow his chosen to be devoured. You may be tested, yes, you may be refined, certainly, but forgotten, never. The one now defending you is the evidence of that eternal truth. Do not doubt their presence, do not second. Guess why they've shown up now. Do not let past wounds convince you that this is just another illusion. When you lived from fear, you attracted those who confirmed that fear. But now that you live from faith, you are attracting those who confirm your favor. This is not just about relationships, this is about spiritual law. The defender is a symbol, a sign, a reflection of your new agreement with heaven. They are not here to replace the work you've done, but to affirm it, to walk with you as your spiritual mirror, to stand with you as your divine echo, to speak when you're tired, to shield when you're vulnerable, to remind you that you are chosen not just in silence, but in the sight of others. And so you must let this defender do what they were called to do. Let them defend, let them love, let them protect without suspicion. You don't need to test them, don't need to question the timing. You are not being punished anymore. You are not in the season of stripping, you are in the season of reinforcing. This is what the divine does. It never lets purpose go unguarded. When the fire gets hotter, God sends someone who walks through flames with you. When the calling gets heavier, someone shows up to help carry the weight. And you did not beg for this blessing, you believed for it. That's why it came. Let this be your new rhythm. Rest in divine defense. Speak less about who hurt you and more about who now stands beside you. Focus not on the betrayals that tried to break you, but on the presence that now surrounds you. Every ounce of protection is confirmation of your alignment. You are walking in something holy now. You are living under divine escort, and while the enemy hoped you would crumble in isolation, God answered with presence, with power, with people. You are not walking alone anymore. You are covered in spirit, in flesh, in force. Someone has risen to guard the gate, and that someone is proof that heaven heard you even when you didn't speak. Heaven watched when no one else saw. Heaven moved while you stood still. And now heaven's response is walking with you, speaking up for you and fiercely defending you. Let this be the end of your doubt. Let this be the beginning of your new identity, the one who is never alone again, the one who is surrounded, protected, uplifted, and reinforced, the one who is understood not by everyone, but by the right ones, the one whose calling is now so evident that even your enemies know you're guarded. And all of it began when you stopped seeing yourself as a victim and began to carry yourself as a vessel. The divine does not defend ego, it defends assignment, and you, chosen one, are on assignment. That is why you are defended now, not because of who you were, but because of who you are becoming. Stand tall in that truth. The defense is divine, and the days of walking alone are over.